leaving my friend's house, I accidentally backed into a brick mailbox. My bike rack hit the mailbox, so my car was okay, but it completely demolished the mailbox. No big deal, right? That's why we have insurance, right? I went to the neighbor and told them what happened and gave them my insurance, phone number, and name. All I got was his first name. From the get-go, this dude was creepy. He kept hitting on me, trying to date me, specifically trying to quote-unquote feed me. I left. On my drive to my mom's, I'm attending out-of-state college and parents are divorced. The guy I backed into, Robert, began to text me and call me. He was insistent that it was better for both of us to just pay out of pocket for the mailbox, sending me links to companies that could fix it for $500, and demanding I go on a date with him so I could give him the cash for the repair, and he could feed me. I don't know what his deal with the food was, but I declined everything, but was starting to get annoyed by his constant text and calls. Finally, after 2 days of it with my responses only, "Please contact my insurance," I sent him a text saying that he was harassing me. I blocked him, but he made a new number and threatened to report it as a hit and run to the police. I'm in law school, okay? This wasn't a hit and run. I blocked the second number, and then he used a new number to ask me if I wanted him to send a screenshot or video of the accident to his insurance. I admit this made me angry. I called this number and dug my nails so hard into my thighs that I drew blood, as he threatened reporting things, asking me on a date, and trying to entice me to just pay cash. I finally screamed, "Don't contact me again, you effing inbred POS." My dad heard me and was upset that I said that to someone I was in an accident with, and that I said that to a guy who thought I was cute and just wanted a date. I then blocked the third number. Next day, he reaches out again to tell me I gave him the wrong policy number. I told him I didn't. He then said it would be easier to pay cash, and that I was the problem, etc. He was talking to his insurance, I guess, and began trying to validate my info. He had my mom's name, address, and phone number. I verified it. I told him to not contact me again and blocked his new number. Next morning, super early, I get a text basically saying he finished the claim, and I was awful for making it harder than it needed to be by going through insurance and not going on a date with him. He then included, "You're so beautiful and ugly at the same time. Don't take risks. Stay on the good path. Goodbye." At this point, I got scared. Fifth number, blocked. Then at midnight, he texts, "You up? I know where you live. Don't try and screw me over on insurance. I'll report it as a hit and run. You should have just gone on a date with me." I took the phone to my dad, showed him the texts, and filled him in. My dad, a pretty scary dude, then calls the guy. He answers, "Shoot, I knew you were into me. Wanna come over?" My dad got very mad. My dad said that this was beyond harassment, that this was his final warning to not contact me, that we didn't care how he reported it. Robert began saying that I came onto him and offered sex as a payment, invited him to my house, and that I was a horny B-word. Instantly blocked. Police contacted, insurance notified, all the things. Next day, talked to insurance, protective order filed. Get another text telling me I shouldn't have involved the police. Block the seventh number, notify police, and then go stay at my dad's because the dude doesn't have his address. My dad is a very tall and very scary dude who loves his Second Amendment. Late last night, I'm watching Star Wars with my dad and older brother, and the doorbell rings. The dad goes to see who it is, and it is freaking Robert, with a trash bag filled with things that I, quote, left at his house. I call the police. My dad goes ballistic, just all the things. The police come and arrest the guy. The bag? It was filled with lingerie, a knife, lip balm, and a Dita Von Tess fetish book. so I just met with an attorney. Plot twist, the guy doesn't own the house. He's an illegal immigrant, is married, and is being deported. I feel awful that he's being deported, but I genuinely think that he wanted to assault and/or kill me. I go back to school in a few days, and I'm so terrified that he or someone else will follow me. Edited to add, I've kept my friend, his neighbor, informed through the whole process. He hasn't reached out to her except for video of me backing into the mailbox. I don't know if an illegal immigrant can be charged with crimes, but he was arrested for stalking, trespassing, felony assault, as he tried to push my dad and then spit at him, insurance fraud, as he lied about the accident to his insurance agent, possession of a deadly weapon with intent, the knife in the bag, and attempted breaking and entering. They just kept adding on the charges. To give some background information, I run a pod simply for fun or to bring awareness to the dangers of the world and people around us. But learning about weird occurrences and true crime has made me more weary of people and behavior. I'm usually really good at chopping occurrences as people just being people. But I do work in an area known for sketchy behavior, drugs, abductions, and stuff like that. That being said, this happened while I was working the store alone. We have cameras, and I'm a fairly big person. I'm 6 foot and a heavyweight athlete. I'm female, though you really couldn't see that due to the amount of layers that I was wearing. Around 12, my friend, who we'll call them A, came to keep me company and sat behind a trash can we have in the corner of the store next to a heater. A man pulls up in a black Lexus and is making wide-eyed contact with me the entire time, which kind of made me uncomfortable, but with my size and appearance, I'm used to men gawking at me. He kept up the staring for a couple of minutes, and then the short man slinked out of his car. I say, "Welcome in," which was met with him starting to swiftly walk around and behind the counter where I work. I was cutting an avocado for my lunch and had a knife in my hand. I got a very strange feeling and told him sternly, "If you need anything, I can help you over there. You cannot be back here." A looked up and coughed. The man whipped around looking at A and briefly said, "I don't need anything," and speed walks out, which left A and me with a terrible feeling. So A eventually leaves, and I sit down and study on my break, where we are pretty dead for at least the next hour, usually. These 3 teens around my age, probably a year younger, come in. The one that started talking to me was visibly sweating and shaking with nerves, which was strange, because it was freezing outside. Like, you could throw water and it would turn to ice cold. Thinking nothing of it, I asked what I could get them. He then blurts out, "Can you give me an Uber?" I said that I could order him one, which was met with, "No, I have cash. Can you give me an Uber home?" I said, "No, I can't leave the store," and I was absolutely not going to be driving strangers on God knows where. He points at the phone and a charger that his friend was holding, and I said there's an outlet over there that you can use. He went to plug it in by my computer, which I said, "Hey man, use the one over there." He walked all the way to the back to get right next to my stuff, which was a little weird, but whatever. The girl with the 2 guys pipes up as soon as they sat down. "No, you can't say that. You'd weird her out." While the other guys said, "Just go ask her," and then continued to whisper something about their plans. And, I'm always happy to help, but I started feeling uneasy. Then they stand up, I kid you not, like 5 minutes after they sat down. They just get up and leave and say, "Bye, thanks for the help." And the main guy pulls keys out of his pocket and continues to get into the car that's been parked in front of my store the entire time. Also, very uncomfortable feeling. Luckily, my manager came in shortly after. It was all fairly strange. I have always wanted my own dog. I put a lot of research into it, and I decided to get a Bernese mountain dog, which my mom graciously paid for part of as a graduation present. One thing to know about this breed, and my dog in specific, Sirius, is that they are very friendly and don't know a stranger. Before getting him, I saw videos of the same breed just napping while repair people came into the backyard. This was not an issue for me. We have a very protective St. Bernard at home, and I didn't think we needed a second guard dog. And as I wanted to be able to take my dog out, it was better for him to be friendly. Around October, when the chill was just starting to form in the air, a friend and I decided to get some pumpkin-flavored coffee for us and a pup cup for Sirius, and then go to a local park to get him some exercise now that it wasn't too hot for him outside, and smoke some. This is not one of the nicer parks. It used to have a dog park attached, but due to continuous flood damage, it was closed down, and now the area where it used to be is mostly secluded. And there's plenty of people who use that for their advantage and do drugs there, like we had planned on doing. There's also lots of families on the weekends, but this was the middle of the week during school and work hours, so the park was pretty empty when we got there. As we walked, we passed a man who was training for something that I'm not sure I'd like to know about. He was carrying a full army pack and was drenched in sweat, and when I later told my stepdad about this, he said that he had seen the same guy running along the main road, where there are no sidewalks. Sirius completely ignored him. We also met a couple who had a Rottweiler puppy a few months younger than my dog, and we stopped to let them play for a moment and talk to the couple. Sirius had absolutely no issue with the pair, and was very happy to receive pets from them. Eventually, we got to the location we were planning to smoke at, directly underneath the train tracks, which is the most secluded location in the park, as there's only one path to get to it, unlike the rest of the park that loops around. This area used to be a road, but was purchased by the city for the park, so it's empty, besides a house or two just past the barriers. We're there for around 30 minutes, before an older man walks by, gives us a "how's it going?" the way people do when you pass them on a walk, and then turns around and walks back the other way. A little while later, he passes back again and notices us still sitting there. Stops and then says, "Are you girls all right? Are you waiting on a ride?" This creeped me out slightly, but I tend to be overly cautious, so I say, "No, we're okay," which was true. I had driven there and I was still nowhere sober enough to drive, and we were just enjoying the nice weather before it got too cold. He responds by telling us to have a nice day and turning around. Sirius, through these interactions, just continued to play with the stick that he was chewing on. I mention these encounters just to solidify how absolutely strange the next one was. Soon after, a man who seemed to be in his late 40s or early 50s started to walk towards us. Instead of turning around like the other man had done, he starts to walk directly towards us. Sirius absolutely loses it, barking and growling at this man, and attempting to lunge at him. Despite the fact that he was only around 7 months at this time, Sirius is a big dog, probably around 70 pounds at this point, and the man was very freaked out and just continues past us, walking faster and keeping his distance. However, like I said earlier, there is nothing behind us besides an empty road and thick, heavy woods. My friend and I continued to sit there talking until I was sure enough that he was gone. That was weird, right? I asked my friend about 30 minutes later. She agreed with me. Where did he even go anyway? That was something I hadn't considered at the time. But looking around, I couldn't think of anywhere he could have gone. Because we were high and stupid, we come up with the brilliant idea to wait and see if he passes us again. And if he doesn't, we'd walk toward the road behind us to see if there were houses that he could have gone to. However, him living in one seemed unlikely. He was dressed for hiking, with one of those backpacks specifically made for it. And if he lived so close, I didn't think he'd be dressed up for a hike. He doesn't pass us again, so we walk up the small hill and past the barricade. There's around 3 houses just past it, all pretty run down. And the second we get to the first one, a man comes out on his porch with a gun and just stares at us. So, safe to say the people who live there aren't a fan of people from the park on their property. I think the only solution is that he went into the woods. I had never seen my dog act like that before, and I haven't seen him act like that since. Every other time he acts like everyone he meets has known him for his whole life. I've always thought that dogs have better instincts than us, and this just proved it for me. We're both pretty small girls, around 100 pounds and under 5'5", and it's scary to think what could have happened had my dog not been with us, and we had no way to defend ourselves in such a secluded area. I've been on this subreddit before, and I'm starting to realize I've unfortunately been a magnet for this stuff my entire life. So this happened a few years ago, and my brain is still fuzzy because, honestly, I've kinda blocked this out from my memory. My older sister, 23 at the time, and myself, 20 at the time, went to Washington, D.C. one year, and I was super excited because I'd never been before. We started the trip with a private tour of the Capitol building, where one of her friends worked at the time. I was honestly super stoked. Even though I had already become disenchanted with politics at that age, it was still really cool to be in the building and learn about the history of the country. After that, we went to the Smithsonian, and just genuinely had a lot of fun educating each other in different subjects we were always into. I was always more math and science oriented, and she was English and history. At the end of one of the days, we were headed to the metro station to get a train back to our hotel. Now, I'd been on train platforms like this before, having visited my uncle in NYC a couple of times, and since then been stationed in Chicago with their metro system. So I have a pretty good understanding of how trains and stops work. My sister said that she needed to go to the bathroom and to wait for her before I got into the train. And I told her okay before making my way to the kiosk to reload my card. While I was at the kiosk, I got this feeling that someone was looking at me. That overwhelming feeling of just being watched, and it was uncomfortable. I turned my head a little, and there, standing in the corner, was what I can only assume to be a homeless man based off his appearance, staring right at me, with huge eyes. At first, I thought nothing of it, as we had people like this back home in Florida too, and went back to what I was doing. I pulled out my phone and started playing a game or something while I waited. Before long, my sister came back and we got on our train. We talked for a bit about what time we were getting up the next morning to catch our flight back, since it was later in the day, around noon. When she started to open her mouth, I froze. Standing in the back of the train car staring at both of us was the same man I had seen earlier. I'll never forget his outfit. He had a dirty gray hoodie, matted brown hair, and a face that looked like he suffered from heavy substance abuse. Dingy skin, ragged blue jeans, and shoes with holes in them. I leaned in, not breaking eye contact, and said, "That guy was staring at me earlier. and now he's still watching us on the train. She looked at him and whispered, "If he gets off when we do, we'll make a dead sprint to the hotel." Honestly, I don't know why we didn't call the police, but knowing where our hotel was, on the end of town where things started to get sketchier, I don't think it would have made much difference for response time. The train stopped at our station, and we got off. I didn't see the man following us, so I thought we were fine. It was still about a 5-block walk to the hotel, and in a really sketchy part of town. It's not that we were cheapskates, it's just all we could afford in all honesty. As we walked, we continued our previous conversation, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I turned around, and I saw that man, hidden behind a brick wall peeking out like Kilroy. I froze. My sister turned around and saw him too. When he realized he'd been busted, he stood straight up and gave a big, cracked grin, and just kept staring. I wanted to challenge him, being 6'3" and 215 pounds at the time, and yell, "What the hell do you want?" But I remember my previous encounter with someone following me and just froze, barely squeaking out an F-bomb. It was about this time the man started walking towards us. I wasn't frozen anymore. We both started a dead sprint toward the hotel. As terrifying as the situation was already, what happened next still makes every hair on my body stand straight. The man screamed absolute nonsense loudly before letting out a Joker-esque cackle, chasing after us. I was lagging behind my sister a little so that she could get to safety before me. She was smaller than me, and I knew that if I needed to, I could maybe fight this guy. I grabbed my wallet from my pocket and pulled out the room key, since it was one of those hotels where you needed to have a key to access the building. Once we were inside, I realized just how far the guy was away from me. I played football in high school, and I was still pretty fast, and I had to have about 10 or 15 yards between us, even if I was running slower. We didn't say anything. We just went upstairs to our rooms and made sure it was locked in every way possible. We left super early and took an Uber to the airport. I don't know what it is with people chasing after me, and I still don't know what that dude wanted, but I really don't want to find out. I, 22, female, was on vacation in San Antonio with a friend for New Year's. In retrospect, I would have picked anywhere else to celebrate, but I had never been to San Antonio before, so I thought it would be cool. When we pull up to the place, it's very obvious it's not in a great neighborhood, but it was extremely cheap and within walking distance to the Riverwalk. I'm no stranger to questionable neighborhoods, so I wasn't too concerned about the area, as it was very quiet. On the day of New Year's Eve, my friend got food poisoning and asked me to get them some stuff from the gas station down the road. I wasn't comfortable taking their truck, and since it was only an 8-minute walk, I started heading out. I got to the gas station, no problem, but they didn't have Pedialyte. So I started walking to another gas station, only 5 minutes away. This is where it gets sketchy. I'm halfway to the next gas station, and I notice there's 2 homeless guys walking around outside their tents next to the street that I'm on. Originally, I was going to walk past them and pay them no mind, but when I got closer, I could tell that they noticed me, and were staring at me. Hard. I'm 5'5", not super athletic. I'm pretty strong, but I'm not taking my chances with 2 grown men. Instead of going straight past them, I turned the corner. I assumed they would go about their business and leave me alone. I hear one of them say, "Hey Randy, come over here." And I glance behind me, and I see 3 men now following me. They're far enough away where I'm not worried but extremely cautious. I glance behind me again after a few minutes, and they're hunched over, huddled up like they're trying to sneak up on me. Much closer this time. I make the smart decision to say screw the Pedialyte and round the corner back towards our place. I may be 1 to 2 blocks away when I check behind me again, and they have also rounded the corner and are walking quickly. I start booking it, and I hear the men behind me yelling at me. I didn't look back this time, but I could hear shuffling feet breaking into a run. Thankfully, I made it inside before they could see where I went. I peeked out the peephole in the door and watched in horror as these 3 men came barreling around the corner and frantically looking around for me. They're arguing and pointing around, but eventually they screw off. If I wasn't so alert, I shudder to think what would have happened. And no, I did not get the Pedialyte. I had to get it delivered. This happened a couple of years ago to me and 2 other friends, 21 female. We were probably 17 at the time. It was summer and we had plans to go to our friend's house. There's this park that is halfway from mine and hers, so my friends and I decided it would be nice to sit in this hut in the park and have a smoke on the way to our friends. This was in the evening, so it was getting dark already, and time passed, it was dark enough for the streetlights to turn on. It's important for the story to explain a bit how the hut was situated in the park. The park was shaped like a big circle around a lake. So, the hut that we sat at had 2 entrances from left and right side. These entrances then connected to the main park path. The hut is open and just has bench seats in a circle and a roof, but open air, if that makes sense. Anyways, the streetlights on the right side were not working, so it was extremely dark on that side. My friend and I are chatting away and people are walking past like normal. Nothing strange. And then this man comes from the left and is walking really slowly. Now, normally this wouldn't catch my attention, but it's the summer, and he had on a long, thick trench coat with a top hat that had a feather and sunglasses. He walked super slowly into the dark and just stood there in the dark. I could make out his silhouette just standing there. At this point, all of my friends are quiet as well, and we're feeling uneasy, as we're all girls. Then the man begins to walk back towards the streetlight that has light on the left side. He stands there for a couple of seconds, staring again, and then he proceeded to walk slowly down the path to the hut, still staring at us. We thought maybe he would just walk through and wanted to scare us, but no. He then sits down in front of us and begins to talk. For context, we live in Brussels, so he started speaking French and said, "What a lovely evening, ladies." We speak and understand French, but in that moment, we knew it was smarter to pretend that we didn't. So we just say, "Sorry, English." You can see him get agitated and mad. He starts going on this whole rant about how we should speak the language of the country and stupid English people think they're better than everyone else. As I said, he was quite mad while saying all this. I began saying to my friends that we should probably leave. Now, our friend is expecting us at her house soon. Since my other friends were so scared too, the minute I said that, they said yes, and started to walk the path to the main park path. But they left their bags and everything, and I had to call them back, like, "Guys, your bags." And they came running back. And while we were quickly gathering our things, he's just staring at us. We got our things and started walking, when suddenly we hear, Hey, come back here." We turn around and see him holding up a can of Coke that my friend had left, and he said that we shouldn't litter and to come back and throw it away. We began to run at that moment, and we didn't look back. The whole way to my friend's house, we were so creeped out and scared, that we thought he would follow us or something, and any person who walked behind us, we panicked. What scared us the most was that he had his hands in his pocket the entire time, and the moment he held up the Coke can, there was something else in his hand that shined with the street light. None of us could make it out, but we assumed, with the shape of the object, and the way it shined from the light, his behavior, and him having his hand in his pocket the whole time as well as calling for us to come back, we think that he had a knife. We've never seen that man since, and all of us refuse to go around that area at night now. It really scared us. I know the story might not be as creepy of an encounter as some of the others that are posted here, but this has stuck with me and my friends for a while, to the point that we've named him the Hat Man. We're not sure what that man would have done if we had stayed longer, or had come back to throw the Coke can out, but I'm glad that we didn't find out. Be safe out there. You never know people's intentions. And if you've read the whole thing, thank you for taking the time. Back when I was a sophomore in high school, I used to be very close friends with this girl, Kay. Kay and I met in middle school, and we instantly clicked. We would hang out after school very frequently. Kay had a very turbulent childhood. Deceased father, foster care, substance abuse mom, and Kay's family would house hop a lot. Our sophomore year, Kay's family was staying with their step-aunt's ex-husband. My parents never really stressed about me hanging out with Kay, because she was such a kind soul, and a great influence on me. Now, the man Kay was staying with, let's call him R, was interesting to say the least. I remember the first incident that made me scratch my head. It was when we all went out to dinner with Kay and her family, and R tagged along. Kay and I were sat at the table with him, and he was venting to us. I was 16, Kay was 16, and he was venting about his dating life and showing us pictures of his Tinder bio, and all the women that he was chatting to. We both kind of laughed it off, and engaged with him, not thinking much of it. Sometimes when Kay and I hung out, R would have us come to the basement, and he had his room with a drum kit, and he would play them for us with the lights off. Anyways, the strangest encounter I personally had with him was when I went to Kay's house to hang out for the day, and she went to take a shower. While she was in the shower, I was sitting in her room, and R wandered in and told me he wanted to show me something cool in his room. Kay's room was on the first floor, and R's room was the only room on the second floor. Being the naive girl I was, I agreed and followed him up the stairs. When we got to his room, he realized it was locked and seemed very annoyed and jittery, because his key was downstairs. Now, instead of going downstairs, R takes a credit card out of his wallet and tries to unlock the door that way. Thankfully, it didn't work, and something clicked in my brain. I decided to go back downstairs and sit in the bathroom with Kay until she was done with her shower. I'm now 23, and looking back at it, I honestly don't think there was anything cool to show me in that room. And I thank the moon and the stars that he never got it unlocked. I never told Kay, but as we got older, I casually asked her if she had any weird encounters with him, and she said no. I'm not really sure how to end this, but I'm thankful I never got to see what was beyond that door. Nowhere near as creepy as the other stuff I've read on here, but still very strange, and I have no idea. Me and my mate D, both 17, are both cruising around our local area in his new car. It's important to note that D had not passed his test, nor had insurance, therefore we usually drove at around 2 or 3 in the morning. We pulled up to our local petrol station to get some cigarettes. I had a goatee and didn't get ID'd, so we came here often. As we pull in, this pretty built dude asks us to roll down our window. We roll down and get chatting to him. He tells us that his wife is very angry at him because he's been on a bender and can't get home, and is desperate for a lift back. Then he offers us £500 for a lift to a city that is only 40 to 50 minutes away. I'd be lying if I didn't say that our dumb 17-year-old brains immediately thought that this was an easy payday. Then the reality set in that we were driving illegally. But we didn't want to tell him that, obviously, so we politely declined. He then gets really insistent that we have to give him a lift. Like, really insistent. I finally realized that surely he can just get a taxi. A guy working in the garage would definitely call him one, and it's not like he's short on cash, nor would the taxi even break £100. So I say this to him, and he genuinely has no answer to it, and just insists that we give him a lift. The actual conversation went on for almost 20 minutes, but unfortunately I can't remember the details. I offer to book him a cash taxi, and after many attempts of convincing him on how much cheaper it is, he accepts. We say we're leaving now, as we were both weirded out, and he just turns to us and says, "You guys are freaking idiots." We just kind of smile and then start driving. Out of nowhere, a guy, even bigger build, runs at our car and just throws his drink all over D through the open window. Obviously, D is fuming and jumps out of the car, and I follow. We walk up, and the guy that was talking to us profusely apologizing for his mate's actions. I remind D that we're driving illegally, and the last thing we want to do is get in a fight and have the police be called. So we get back in, drive off, and cancel his taxi. The rest of the night, we were just trying to make sense of what just happened. It just never sat right with me. I don't know why he was so insistent. Maybe so when we got there he could just jump out and run so he gets a free lift for him and his mate. It could have been to rob the car. But then knocking out two fully grown lads for a beat-up dinger seems a lot of effort. I've always been genuinely curious as to what would have happened if we accepted, and how bad of a situation it could have been. So that, my friends, was a collection of some stalker and stranger stories, or creepy encounter stories, however you want to call them. You know what these stories are. They are stories about creeps, weirdos, and people you just genuinely don't want to have encounters with. And, yeah, I wouldn't want to have an encounter with literally any of these people, so... thank you to everyone who submitted their stories or let me use their stories from Reddit. I do appreciate it. And, as I always say, hopefully, these stories, while entertaining, can also have a certain level of education to them. Hopefully no one that listens to this ever ends up in a situation like this, but hopefully if anyone does, they can think back to these kinds of stories and plan their next moves accordingly. If that makes any sense. It made sense whenever I thought it, so... Hopefully you guys all enjoyed these stories, and if you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, consider subscribing, as that helps the channel grow, and growth is important. You can also go below the video and leave me a comment, letting me know your thoughts, how you're doing, how things are going, what kind of topics you want to see on the video, etc., etc. And if you have a story you want to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. Yeah. All that said, friends, I hope you're having a gorgeous week. I hope I'll see you again here very soon. You'll know you'll see me very soon. But I hope I see you, too, as well. I hope I see you soon. I want to see you soon. Come back. Like tomorrow. There'll be a video tomorrow. And the next day. 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 It's a busy month. Anyways, hope to see you again here very soon. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important. You are the best you that you can be. Don't forget it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone out there dull your shine, my friend. Until next time, much love and sleep well.